He thought he was saving money. $40 here, $50 there. The same oil he put in his truck, now sitting in his boat engine. It worked fine. For 3 years, it worked fine. Then, 40 miles from shore, with his son beside him, silence. The engine locked. No warning, no smoke. Just a $9,000 mistake floating in the middle of the Gulf. And here's what keeps me up at night. Thousands of boat owners are doing the exact same thing right now. They don't know what's happening inside their engine. They can't see it. They can't hear it. But it's there, eating away at the metal, one trip at a time. Before we dive in, I need to ask you something. Have you ever used automotive oil in your outboard? Drop a yes or no in the comments. I want to know how common this really is. And if you're serious about protecting your boat, hit subscribe and ring that bell, because what I'm about to show you could save you thousands, or explain why your next repair bill is going to hurt. Now, let me show you what's really going on inside that engine. Walk into any auto parts store in America, and you'll find yourself standing in an aisle that poses a question most boat owners have asked at least once. On one shelf sits a gallon of marine-grade 4-stroke oil. The label shows a boat. The price tag reads $30.99. On the shelf beside it, same brand, same viscosity, same weight, automotive oil, $24.99. $14 difference for what looks like the same product. Now multiply that by 3 oil changes a year. Over 5 years, you're looking at more than $200 in savings. For a lot of people, that math is hard to ignore, and if you've ever found yourself reaching for the cheaper bottle, you're not alone. Boating forums are filled with this debate. Threads that stretch back years, with hundreds of replies and no clear consensus. One user writes that he's been running Mobil 1 synthetic in his Mercury for 6 seasons without a single issue. Another swears his uncle used nothing but Valvoline in his old Johnson Outboard for 2 decades. Never cracked it open. Never had a problem. Someone else chimes in with a theory. Marine oil is a scam. It's just automotive oil with a picture of a boat on the label and a markup to match. These testimonials feel convincing. They come from real people with real experience. And on the surface, they're not entirely wrong. Many automotive and marine oils share similar base stocks. The crude oil they start with is often identical. The refining process is the same. So, what's the difference? The difference is invisible. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. To understand why marine oil exists, why engineers and chemists spent years developing a product that costs more and looks the same, you have to understand what an outboard engine actually goes through. Because the truth is, your boat motor lives a very different life than the engine in your car. And it's not even close. Consider the way your car engine operates. On a typical highway drive, your engine cruises somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM. Occasionally, you accelerate hard. You pass a truck, merge onto the freeway, and for a few seconds, the needle climbs. But most of the time, your engine is loafing, coasting, resting between bursts of effort. Now consider your outboard. When you're running across open water, whether you're heading to a fishing spot, pulling a skier, or cruising to your favorite cove, your motor is often turning at 4,500 to 5,500 RPM. Not for a few seconds, for hours. At wide open throttle or close to it, mile after mile, with no traffic lights to slow you down and no stop signs to give the engine a break. That sustained high-speed operation generates more heat, more friction, more stress on every moving part. And the oil that protects those parts has to work harder, longer, and under conditions that automotive oil was never designed to handle. But RPM is only part of the story. Your car engine sits under a hood, surrounded by a closed cooling system. A radiator, a thermostat, sensors that monitor temperature and adjust the flow of coolant to keep everything stable. The crankcase is sealed, dry, protected from the outside world. Your outboard engine is different. It's cooled by raw water, pulled directly from the lake, river, or ocean you're floating on. That water flows through the power head and exits through the exhaust. It keeps the engine cool, yes, but it also introduces something your car engine never has to deal with: moisture. Constant, relentless moisture. And in a marine environment, especially saltwater, that moisture carries corrosive elements that attack metal surfaces from the inside out. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Because the difference between marine oil and automotive oil isn't something you can see by looking at the bottle. It's not printed on the label in bold letters, it's buried in the chemistry, in the additive packages that determine how the oil behaves under stress. And by the time you notice something is wrong, the damage has already been done. Let's start with corrosion inhibitors. Marine oils are formulated with high concentrations of rust and corrosion inhibitors. These additives are specifically designed to neutralize moisture, to coat internal metal surfaces and prevent the oxidation that leads to pitting, scoring, and premature wear. In an environment where condensation is constant and saltwater air is never far away, this protection isn't optional, it's essential. Automotive oils take a different approach. They're formulated primarily for emissions system compatibility. Modern cars have catalytic converters, particulate filters, and oxygen sensors that can be damaged by certain metallic additives. So automotive oil manufacturers reduce the ash content and limit the corrosion inhibitors to protect those systems. It's a smart design choice for cars. But in a marine engine, it means the oil offers less defense against the slow, invisible corrosion that eats away at bearing surfaces, cylinder walls, and camshaft lobes. Then there's the issue of foam resistance. At sustained high RPM, the oil inside your crankcase can aerate. The crankshaft spinning at 5,000 revolutions per minute whips the oil into a froth, mixing tiny air bubbles into the lubricant. When that happens, the oil loses its ability to form a consistent protective film. Metal touches metal. Friction spikes. Wear accelerates. Marine oils are formulated with enhanced anti-foam agents to prevent this. They're designed to shed air quickly and maintain film strength even under continuous high-speed operation. Automotive oils, optimized for the variable RPM patterns of stop-and-go driving, may not perform the same way when pushed to their limits for hours at a time. And finally, their sheer stability. The viscosity improvers in automotive oil, the polymers that help the oil maintain its thickness across a range of temperatures, are engineered for the kind of driving most cars do. Short trips, variable speeds, frequent cool-down periods. But under hours of sustained load, those polymers can break down. The oil thins out, its protective properties diminish. And by the time you dock your boat at the end of the day, the oil that started the trip as a robust lubricant may have degraded into something far less effective. This isn't theory. This is what marine mechanics see every year in service bays across the country. A technician at a Yamaha dealership in Florida described it this way: "We get 2 or 3 of these cases a year. Guy comes in, says his motor's been running rough. We pull the head, and the cylinder walls look like they've been sandblasted. Tiny pitting everywhere. He swears he changed the oil on schedule. Then we check the filter, and it's full of rust particles. First question I ask, what oil were you running? The answer, more often than not, is automotive. These mechanics have seen camshaft scoring caused by micro-pitting that developed over seasons of use. They've seen bearing shells with a distinctive orange discoloration, a telltale sign of oxidation from moisture the oil failed to neutralize. They've seen piston rings lose their seal, leading to blow-by, power loss, and fuel consumption that climbs with every trip. None of these failures happen overnight. They build slowly, quietly, and by the time the symptoms become obvious, the rough idle, the oil consumption, the loss of power, the repair bill is already waiting. Let's do the math that nobody wants to do. Over 5 years, switching from marine oil to automotive oil saves you roughly $225. That's real money. It's a nice dinner out, a new fishing rod, a tank of fuel for a weekend trip. Nobody would blame you for wanting to keep that cash in your pocket. But here's the other side of that equation. A powerhead rebuild on a modern 4-stroke outboard, parts and labor, runs between $4,500 and $8,000, depending on the engine and the extent of the damage. If the corrosion has spread too far, if the cylinder walls are scored beyond repair, if the crankshaft bearings have failed, you're not looking at a rebuild anymore. You're looking at a replacement. And a new outboard engine, depending on horsepower and brand, can cost anywhere from $12,000 to $25,000 or more. You saved $225. You spent $8,000. That's not a bargain. That's a lesson most people only learn once. Consider the case of a boat owner in British Columbia. He ran full synthetic automotive oil in his Honda BF 150 for 4 years. Quality oil, changed on schedule. His boat lived in fresh water. No saltwater exposure at all. He did everything right, or so he thought. In year 5, the engine started consuming oil at an alarming rate, a quart every few trips, then more. He brought it in for diagnosis, expecting maybe a gasket issue. Something simple, something cheap. The teardown told a different story. The camshaft lobes showed significant wear. The cylinder walls were scored. The cause, according to the technician, was insufficient rust inhibition during winter storage. Every year, when the boat sat idle for months, condensation accumulated inside the power head. The automotive oil, lacking the corrosion inhibitors of a marine-grade product, couldn't protect the metal surfaces. Season after season, the damage compounded. Total repair cost $60 to $800, plus 3 months without his boat during peak summer season, all to save a few dollars per oil change. And here's what makes this situation even more painful. The warranty won't save you. Most outboard manufacturers include a line somewhere in the owner's manual, usually buried deep, in small print, next to torque specifications and maintenance schedules, that reads something like this: use FCW certified marine oil. That's the certification administered by the National Marine Manufacturers Association. It stands for 4-stroke cycle, water-cooled, and it represents a testing standard that automotive oils are not required to meet. If your engine fails and the dealer finds evidence of non-certified oil use, your warranty claim can be denied. It doesn't matter that you change the oil regularly. It doesn't matter that you used a premium brand. If the oil didn't carry the FCW certification, the manufacturer has grounds to refuse coverage. Mercury's service documentation makes this explicit. Yamaha's does too, so does Honda's. The language is dry, legal, and easy to overlook, but it's there. And when you're staring at a 5-figure repair bill, those few sentences become the most expensive words you never read. Why don't manufacturers warn customers more clearly? Why isn't this information printed on the engine itself, in bold letters, impossible to miss? The truth is complicated. Dealers profit from oil sales and service work. There's little financial incentive to educate customers about risks when the customers who make mistakes will eventually return for expensive repairs. And in online forums where these debates rage endlessly, manufacturers rarely engage. The misinformation spreads unchecked because the people whose engines failed aren't posting. They're too busy paying the bills. Here's the uncomfortable truth that keeps this myth alive. Automotive oil can work in an outboard. For a while, it works just fine. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. In the short term, you won't notice anything wrong. The engine starts smoothly. Oil pressure reads normal. The motor sounds healthy, runs strong, delivers the power you expect. There are no warning lights, no strange noises, no obvious signs that something is going wrong beneath the surface. You change the oil on schedule, check the dipstick, and everything looks good. The color is right. The level is right. The boat performs exactly the way it should. This is why so many forum posts swear by automotive oil. The people writing them aren't lying. They're reporting their genuine experience. 3 years of trouble-free operation. 5 years, sometimes longer. And from their perspective, the marine oil crowd is just paranoid, or worse, shilling for the oil companies. But here's what they don't see. The damage is cumulative. It builds slowly, invisibly, over months and years. Corrosion doesn't announce itself. It starts as microscopic pitting on bearing surfaces, too small to affect performance, too small to measure without precision instruments. With each trip, that pitting spreads. The protective film of oil, compromised by inadequate additives, fails to stop the oxidation. Metal surfaces that should remain smooth begin to roughen. Friction increases. Wear accelerates. By the time the symptoms appear, the rough idle, the oil consumption, the subtle loss of power that you might attribute to a dozen other causes, the damage is often irreversible. The engine that ran perfectly last season now needs a rebuild. And the owner, who saved a few $100s over the years, is left wondering what went wrong. It's like skipping sunscreen for a summer. You don't get burned on day one. The damage happens quietly, beneath the surface, accumulating with each exposure. And years later, when the consequences finally appear, it's too late to go back. Understanding this requires understanding the difference between certification standards, the invisible framework that determines what an oil is designed to do. Automotive oils in the United States are certified under the API system, the American Petroleum Institute. The current standards, API-SN and SP, are rigorous. They test for emissions system compatibility, fuel economy, deposit control, and protection against wear under typical driving conditions. These are excellent certifications for what they're designed to accomplish. They ensure that the oil in your car will protect your engine, preserve your catalytic converter, and meet federal emissions requirements. What they don't test for is long-term corrosion resistance in humid, high-load, water-cooled environments. That's not a flaw in the standard. It's simply not what automotive oil is built for. Marine oils carry a different certification, FCW, administered by the National Marine Manufacturers Association. This standard requires specific testing for rust and corrosion protection, the kind of testing that reflects the reality of marine engine operation. Oils that carry the FCAA label have demonstrated their ability to protect metal surfaces from moisture, to resist foam under sustained high RPM, and to maintain viscosity under continuous load. A lubrication engineer put it this way: an API-certified oil is excellent for what it's designed to do, but asking it to protect a marine engine is like asking a marathon runner to compete in a swim meet. Different sport, different demands. You need the right tool for the job. The certifications exist for a reason. The chemistry is different for a reason. And when we ignore those differences, when we assume that all oils are created equal because they look the same on the shelf, we're gambling with machinery that costs tens of thousands of dollars to replace. So where does this leave you? If you've made it this far, you're not the kind of person who takes shortcuts without understanding the consequences. You want to make informed decisions. You want to protect your investment. And you deserve straight answers about how to do that. Here's what smart boat owners do. First, and most importantly, always use FCW certified oil in your 4-stroke outboard. Look for those 3 letters on the label. If they're not there, the oil wasn't formulated for marine use and it hasn't passed the corrosion and foam resistance test that your engine demands. This isn't about brand loyalty or paying extra for a logo. It's about chemistry. The additives matter. The certification proves it. Second, don't let viscosity fool you. A bottle of 10W, 30 marine oil, and a bottle of 10W, 30 automotive oil may display the same numbers, but they are not interchangeable. The weight rating tells you how the oil flows at different temperatures. It tells you nothing about the additive package inside, the corrosion inhibitors, the anti-foam agents, the shear stable polymers that determine whether the oil will protect your engine through a full season of hard use. Third, change your oil before winter storage, not after. This is one of the most overlooked maintenance practices in boating. Used oil contains acids and moisture, byproducts of combustion that accumulate over a season of operation. If you leave that oil sitting in your crankcase for 4 or 5 months over winter, those contaminants have all the time they need to attack your engine's internal surfaces. Drain the old oil before you put the boat away. Fill it with fresh marine-grade lubricant. Give your engine clean protection while it sleeps. Fourth, don't forget the extras. A fuel stabilizer prevents the ethanol in modern gasoline from absorbing moisture and degrading over storage. Fogging oil sprayed into the cylinders before winter coats the cylinder walls and protects them from condensation. These products cost a few dollars and take minutes to apply. They can save you thousands. And finally, keep records. Every oil change, every service, every product you use. If a warranty claim ever arises, documentation of proper maintenance can mean the difference between coverage and denial. A logbook costs nothing. The protection it provides is priceless. But this video isn't really about oil. Not entirely. It's about something larger, something that applies to every machine we rely on, every product we trust with our safety, our money, and our time on the water. The marine industry, like every industry, is built on invisible expertise. Somewhere, in a laboratory you'll never visit, a lubrication chemist spent years developing the formula in that bottle of marine oil. A metallurgist studied the wear patterns on camshaft lobes to understand how corrosion begins. An engineer ran thousands of hours of dynamometer tests to determine exactly how much protection a 4-stroke outboard needs to survive a decade of hard use. We never meet these people. We never see their work. But every time we start our engines and head out onto the water, we're trusting them with our lives. When we assume that all oils are the same, that the cheaper option must be just as good because it looks identical, we're not just risking our engines, we're dismissing the work of people who dedicated their careers to solving problems we don't even know exist. The best maintenance is the kind you never notice. The oil does its job, the engine runs, and you get to focus on what really matters: the water, the horizon, and the reason you bought the boat in the first place. But this raises another question, one that sparks even more debate in the boating world. What about fuel? Are you running the right octane? Does ethanol really damage marine engines? The answers might surprise you. That story is next.